Everyone, good afternoon. My name is Rosalie Galvez and I'm going to share with you about differentiated instruction that focuses about accommodation and modification. But first, let's have a short overview about differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction is a teaching approach that recognizes that students have different learning needs, abilities, interests, and learning styles. One important strategy within differentiated instruction is accommodation, which helps ensure that all students have equal opportunities to learn and demonstrate their understanding. Now, let us define the word accommodation. An accommodation is a support or adjustment made to how a student learns or shows what they know without changing the learning objectives, curriculum standards, or expectation. The students still expected to master the same content as their classmates, but the way they assess instruction or complete tasks is adapted to meet their individual needs. And there are four types of accommodation. The first one is presentation accommodation. Information is presented differently, such as using large print materials, audiobooks, visual aids, or sign language interpreters. Example for that, a student with a slideshow is provided with an audiobook, or the teacher reads the lesson aloud while the student follows the printed text. This is a presentation accommodation because it changes how the information is presented, not what the student is expected to learn. The student still studies the same lesson, completes the same learning objectives, and is assessed using the same standards as classmates. The accommodation simply removes barriers to assessing the content. Number two type of accommodation is what we call response accommodations. Students demonstrate their learning through alternatives such as giving oral answers using computer or speech-to-text software. Example, a student with a physical disability is allowed to type answers on a laptop instead of writing them by hand during a test. This is a response accommodation because it changes how the student responds or demonstrates learning, not what the student is expected to learn. The student still assessed on the same learning objectives and standards as the rest of the class. Number three type is what we call setting accommodations. The learning environment is adjusted, such as providing preferential setting or allowing students to work in a quiet room with fewer distractions. Example, a student with ADHD takes a quiz in a quiet room with minimal distractions instead of in the regular classroom. This is a setting accommodation because it changes where the student learns or takes an assessment, not what the student is expected to learn. The student completes the same quiz as is assessed using the same learning objectives and standards as classmates, but in an environment that better supports concentration. Number four, timing and scheduling accommodations. Students receive additional time, frequent breaks, or flexible schedules to complete assignments or assessment. Example, the student with a learning disability is given 30 extra minutes to complete a mathematics examination. This is a timing and scheduling accommodation because it changes when or how long a student has to complete a learning activity or assessment without changing the learning objectives or standards. The student is expected to complete the same test as classmates but is provided with additional time to demonstrate their knowledge effectively. Now let's go to the differentiated instruction modification. Modifications refers to the changes in the student is expected to learn or demonstrate. Unlike accommodation, modification changes the learning objectives, curriculum content, instructional materials, or assessment expectation to match a student's individual abilities and needs. There are also different types of modification. Number one, content modification, the student learns fewer or simplified concepts than the rest of the class, like simplified reading passages, reduced vocabulary list, simplified lessons. Example, a grade 6 student with an intellectual disabilities studies the main idea and key idea of the story, while the rest of the class analyzes themes, symbolism, and figurative language. This is a content modification because it changes what the student is expected to learn. The lesson content is simplified or reduced to match the student learning needs and abilities. Unlike an accommodation, the learning objectives are modified. Number 2, assignment modification. The amount of complexity of work is adjusted, like fewer homework questions, shortened writing assignments, simplified projects. Example, a student with an intellectual disability is assigned 10 math problems instead of 30, focusing only on the essential skill being taught. This is an assignment modification because it changes the amount of complexity of the student's work. The assignment is adjusted to match the student's learning abilities and individualized goals. Unlike an accommodation, the academic expectations are modified. Number 3, assessment modification. The assessment is changed to match the student learning goals, like different test questions, alternative assessments such as portfolios or practical demonstrations, and reduced number of test items. Example, a student with a significant learning disability completes a 10-item test covering basic concepts, while the rest of the class takes a 30-item test that includes more advanced questions. This is an assessment modification because it changes what the student is assessed on or the level of difficulty of the assessment. The assessment is adapted to match the student's individualized learning goals and abilities. Unlike an accommodation, the learning expectations and standards are modified. Performance expectation modifications. Students are expected to achieve different learning outcomes based on their individualized goals, like mastering basic skills instead of advanced concepts, completing simplified learning objectives. Example, during an English lesson, the class is expected to write a 5-paragraph essay. A student with a significant cognitive disability is expected to write one well-organized paragraph with teacher support that demonstrates the main idea. This is a performance expectation modification because it changes the level of performance or learning outcome expected from the student. The student works toward individualized learning goals that are appropriate for their abilities rather than the same performance standards as the rest of the class. Understanding the difference between accommodation and modification has deepened my appreciation for inclusive education. I learned that accommodations remove barriers to learning without changing the learning goals, while modifications adjust the learning expectations to match a student's abilities. Both approaches are valuable because they ensure that students receive instruction appropriate to their individual needs. As a future endeavor, I realized that my role is not only to teach academic content but also to create a classroom where every student feels welcome, respected, and capable of succeeding. By applying differentiated instruction thoughtfully, I can promote equity, inclusion, and meaningful learning for all students, regardless of their abilities or cultural backgrounds. This has inspired me to become a more compassionate, flexible, and reflective teacher who is committed to helping every learner reach the full potential. That's all for my report. Have a great day, and thank you to all of you. Thank you to everyone. God bless!